is a real world we got going on. And if our kids learn from all of this, that's great too. I never used to think my grandsons were listening to me, and now they're both entrepreneurs. One's 21 and the other one's 23. So I think they do hear us when we talk, okay? Hi, everybody. Anthony, you connecting? Good. And Charlotte, if you could do so as well. And we'll get started here. We're gonna do something a little bit crazy to start today. I'm gonna show you a video that I got in the mail from a colleague. Now, this colleague of mine, what does he do for a living? Strickland Companies out of La Jolla, California. He invests in American technologies and takes them to the Pacific Rim for manufacturing. So let's take a look at this video, and then I want to hear what you have to think about it afterwards. Entrepreneurs. Here we are in China, and there's the traditional China. Only something is about ready to happen you are simply not going to believe. And off he goes. He's a human jet. There's two of them. And they fly between all these sacred places in China with the permission of the Chinese government. Look at how fast they're going. That's a wing strapped to their back. They're human jet airplanes. We can't hear the sound real well doing this, but if you look this up, it's called Mission Human Flight. Okay, let's turn it off then. We got a look at what's going on here. So when do you all think the original concept of human flight using a wing strapped to the human body was created? Who do you think created it? When was it created? Let's test your knowledge of history and technology. Anybody? Karen, Bobby.
Wasn't it Daedalus?
Well, Daedalus from Greek, yes. But who actually constructed the first one?
Oh.
Right, the Wright brothers?
You should know this, Anthony.
Michelangelo.
Leonardo da Vinci, close.
Oh, Da Vinci.
Yes, he built it out of wood. They flew it off a cliff. Several people died doing it because it was just way too heavy. That particular project, Mission Human Flight, is funded by the Dubai government. And so it was tested in the Middle East, and it is up there. It's fraught with problems. Do you register it as an airplane? Do you have to register a flight plan? Do you have to have a pilot's license? Could it be used for military or terrorist purposes? There's a yes to all of that. But it's a piece of technology that is absolutely stunning, made possible by 3D printing, computer boards and microprocessors that are able to give all kinds of communication signaling, and an effort on the part of a human being to say, I can do this. So today we're going to talk about, I thought it was a good way of introducing customer discovery, because the person who planned that, how to get to the Dubai government to get funding for that, okay? So the question is, how do you get to governments, companies, nonprofit foundations, and people who might possibly fund your company? How do you get to people who are going to work with you? And how do you do customer interviews and why? So let's take a look at our first slide. Can we, Cecilia? Oh, by the way, I'm Susan Cornelius. I am the lead mentor for the eCommerce programs for the University of New Mexico. I've started up, coached and mentored about 500 companies since 2000. My specialties are mostly tech companies and software companies, although I've worked in biotech quite a bit. I was a member of a 7-member team that created the University of California, San Diego health system in La Jolla. So I've done healthcare systems, and I've been on the beginning of the technologies that were used, from the interactive walls for patients to the room computer systems and communications. They could see the results of their testing on their own. and the Pyxis machines. These are vault storage for Schedule A drugs. So my name is Susan Cornelius. I am called the chief instigator of Accelerate to Solutions, and that's my email if you want to get in touch with me. Let's go to the next slide. You know what? We are on the wrong slides. Cecilia, this is the wrong presentation. Sorry about that, false start. Let's go around the room for just a minute while Cecilia gets the right presentation up. Carmen, what is your product and what's its value? What are you working on?
Hi, Susan. I'm Carmen Martinez. I'm the director of the Small Business Development Center at San Juan College. So I'm basically here to learn.
You're basically here to learn. Good.
Yeah.
So I'll give a name to the system we're looking at. It's put together by Strategizer. It's called a business model canvas. A bunch of us in 2000 were working with startup companies, and we realized we were all using a similar model. What we were doing was working. So Strategizer under Alexander Osterwalder put together the model that we use. Do I believe in models? No, they're just tools for doing things, but that's the work that we're doing. Okay, here we are. We're on our customer journey, though, talking about customers, the why and the how. Let's go to the next slide. So why do we talk to customers? You know, you guys can take the scariest leap in developing technology, and yet you don't want to talk to customers. What we know is it isn't marketing, and it isn't a very expensive marketing person that you need to begin with. What you need is to talk to your customers. And it's not just about hearing their stories, although that's one part of it. It's gathering data about whether or not they have a problem that your solution solves. And we're going to talk about talking too much during interviews, giving away too much of what you're doing before talking to the client about what it is that they're having problems with and what it is that they need. We pull customers in by talking to them. And that is really the purpose of doing customer interviews. We've got to discover our market and talk to them. I'm not talking about cold calling, listening, putting down a whole list of phone numbers and just calling people, although that's part of it. What we're talking about is the first person you talk to, ask them for a referral to 2 more people. I called up a childhood girlfriend of my daughter's for this one company that I'm taking to National I-Core, Innovation Core on Monday, and she gave me the names of 5 people for us to talk to. That's what we're looking for. Is I can say to them now, I spoke with Janet, she thinks you have something that would be helpful to us in figuring out whether people think our product will solve their problem. So you pull them in by talking to them. I don't care if you've just opened up a restaurant truck and you're doing fine foods. You walk around and you talk to people. One of my favorite people is a guy by the name of Paul. And Paul is the entrepreneur of something called Cutboat Coffee on Rio Grande Boulevard. He started out life as a roaster for Pete's Coffee in the West, in Washington and Oregon. He's a master roaster, makes the best coffees in the world, and he came back to New Mexico. From day one, when that shop opened, and it's very tiny, he walked around and he delivered the cups of coffees. He found out who his customers were. He talked to them. He found out what they did. And if they were in there by themselves with their laptops, he made sure they had places to sit so they could continue to do their work. He immediately connected to the customer that he was serving, which was for the most part business people. And you know what? None of those people bothered to worry about that cup of coffee cost a little bit more than Starbucks, because not only was it outstanding, but it came with a group of people who tried to get into who you were. And their big thing is to greet people by name when you walk in. And that place is packed morning, noon, and night, even though it's COVID, because they're serving out on the street. And we all go there to get our cup of coffee and sit on the tables outside, even when the weather's freezing. So you pull your customers in by talking to them. You share the value of the product. Paul walked around and he told everybody how he roasted and how he dedicated a whole day to roasting and how he got the coffee to flavor the way it was, because nobody could believe how fragrant and how delicious this coffee was. I'm drinking decaf coffee and I think I'm drinking regular coffee because it's just that good. You tell him a story about why you think what you're doing is important. He started off with when Pete's Coffee opened up 24 years ago. I was a young man. I was from New Mexico. I had never lived in Oregon and Washington. And my family had roasted coffee at home. They brought me in to train me. And he said, I fell in love with the whole process of serving coffee to people and making it a culture in which I could talk to customers and business people and help them have a good day. And in fact, that's what he did. He does. If he sees somebody who looks a little down, he brings them a taste of something else. If he sees a customer that's been in there regular times, one after the other, he brings them a taste of something sweet to eat, that if they can eat it. And as a result, during COVID, over the last 11 to 12 months, his store has remained open. He's also pulled up a website that he created, and he is giving us what we need online on our phones on an app. And we can literally walk up to the back of the store. We don't have to get in the middle of people, pick up what we've got, and go home if we want to. He figured out quickly what he needed to do to pull his customers in when his entire life changed and he had to close. He couldn't have people come inside. So it's really important what Paul did. He told us a story about why he thinks having a cup of coffee and interacting with community is important. He talked about his product, how he roasts it and doesn't use chemicals, how what he does serves the community. And in his case, he does a lot of volunteer work as well, and how he sees it being used. Los Poblanos, very, very high-end restaurant and resort on Rio Grande, is now selling his coffee for him. So it was important that he had this vision. He was able to talk about it, but he did one last thing. He asked people, does my service, does my coffee, does being here in this community setting, have you ever done that to solve a problem? Does it solve a problem for you? And people talked about not being able to meet people in their offices because they worked virtually from home, and how the coffee shop was another office for them to meet the people they needed to do business with. He hit the right tone. He found out what people want. Now, I realize it's not technology, and I am a technologist. My background is working in building engineering and applications of particle accelerator physics, so signaling devices. I've never started up a coffee shop in my life, but finding the trend of what makes companies successful and why it is we talk to customers is critical. Next slide. Here we go. So why talk to your customer? Well, I'm going to repeat this over and over again because people just struggle with this. You ask them how they got into what they're doing and then what are the reasons that are important to them. You ask, how do you currently solve a problem like the one I presented to you? And you find out what they're using. If you talk too long about your product and what you're doing and how you're getting in, it's human behavior to say, oh, I really like Hanif, and I really want to help him be successful, and I really want to do things for him. So I'm going to try to come up with the most positive answers I can. What you want is the honesty of why they think what you're doing won't work and what they think you need, because that often causes a pivot in the product that we deliver. When Apple, which is one of my favorite companies, their story is just incredible, started up with the first Apple computer that was portable. I got one. Let me tell you, if that CRT, which was cathode ray tube, was portable, I'm a horse's patootie, because I would carry that thing with my briefcase under my other arm, trying to get into my office at the university, and that silly thing weighted me down so I was walking like this. It only had a 6.5-inch screen, and it was as heavy as a ton of lead bricks. It was not portable. And then under my other arm with my briefcase, I had the keyboard and everything else. And on top of that, we had to stick in floppy disks that were about that big into it, download the operating system, pull it out, hope it loaded, and then pull in whatever program disk we were working on. It was challenging, 15 to 20 minutes just to get your first program up and working. You want to be asking questions about what are people currently using to solve the problem? Well, I used to go to Starbucks. Or in the case of the particle accelerators that we've developed that are so tiny, think of something that sits on the coffee table that puts out signal when the big particle accelerator at LAMP at Los Alamos is half a mile long. When you take this little device, what kinds of problems are we solving? Well, to do neutron generation for treatment of brain tumors, you need to have something that gets injected into it to polarize things inside so that they work. They cause a little bit of radiation, but so that when they go to the human body using a computer model, they don't destroy healthy tissue. They only go down like this and destroy the unhealthy tissue. And so we developed that, and I can't tell you the number of people that told us it didn't work. We looked at one another and went, but it does. And it was one of those things where we couldn't tell them too much about what they were doing, how to find out how they were doing it. So that when we presented what we were doing, they sat there and said, "That is not going to work." And we said, "Well, it does." And we talked about the results we were getting, and all of a sudden they went, "My, that's going to solve this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem." And they would come up with about 6 different industries for us to go into and give us names of people to talk to. We're going to talk about how you get those interviews, so don't worry. Then you ask them about what they think about your solution and other detailed questions. The first part of any interview is a story about who you are and why you're doing what you're doing. Then asking them to tell their story about when they tried to solve a problem like that, so you can get into the details. We're human beings. We don't want you to start nailing us with facts. We want you to talk to us about, what are you doing this for? Why? What is it? How's it going to solve a problem? Wait. I've solved problems like this. This is what I do. That's the reaction that you want out of them. And at the end, you want them to say to you, "Well, I got 2 more people for you to talk to. Why is this, and why are we trying to increase the number of people that we want to talk to?" I can tell you the story of one of the most beautiful electric cars I've ever seen that was developed by a company on the road in San Diego, and it looks an awful lot like one of those enclosed bicycles. Uses very little electricity, and people use it for surfaces. You don't see many of them on the road. I can talk with you about an elliptical bike that works the same as an ellipse when you're in the gym. And there's one guy in my neighborhood who's got one, but he bought it 10 years ago. Good ideas fail because we don't talk to our customers and find out if this is what they want. Customers will listen to you, but first you have to listen to them. So I'm doing a lot of talking right now, but once I've told my story, which takes me a minute and a half, so it's short, and they start telling me a story, then I quietly start asking them questions about the problems they're solving. What solutions are they using? What data are they getting? Do they need something different? If they got something different, what would it need to do? And you listen and you take notes. Now, I really like to see 2 people from your company in the interview, one person taking notes, the other person talking, because you really will get more information if you're looking at the person instead of putting your head down and looking like you're writing something or sitting there at your computer moving your fingers real fast, to get notes done. Next slide, please. We're going to talk some more about why talk to your customers. I missed the slide. Okay, next slide. I guess I didn't. We need for you to learn when you're starting your company to do market research, and we're going to talk about how you do that. Market research, if you work full-time for 1 week on market research, you can begin to carry out your customer discovery, okay? If you got any questions while I'm talking, let me know. Navigate the development of your startup in a virtual world. I'm almost full-time on Zoom, Google Group, Microsoft Team, and I've recently discovered some new ones that my clients are using. And I got to get used to them, but basically, people are talking to one another. Yesterday, and Jason knows this because he was trying to get a hold of me, I was on Zoom from 7 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, and I got a lot done. Working with a lot of different companies, just like I'm talking to you right now. So I had to get rid of any barriers I had to doing this, which frankly I didn't, because my first job assignment working in a startup was with a guy by the name of Brian Kenner. He and Harry Gruber. What did they develop? Well, we just watched a video on the web, right? They own all the international patents and national patents for video streaming via the World Wide Web. Yep. 2000, they sold their company for $3.5 billion and moved on. Brian started up a company called Learning Framework, which no longer exists. Why? It was a prototype for Google Chrome's keyword search. So how do you respond? I've got a question. When you realize you truly have the wrong product, you pivot. You sit down and you listen to your customers. So if what I'm trying to do is put a new app on my phone so I can help locate my phone and send a signal to it, and because I'm always losing it in the house, right, or in my office, and people say to me, I don't want that. A small group says that, then I have to say to myself, what else can I do with that signaling algorithm that I developed? All right. What could people use a signaling algorithm for? What if I develop a candle and somebody else says to me, I've already got an organic candle that really smells like a rose? You have to sit down and figure out how your signaling device and how your candle is unique and different, because maybe they truly don't want it, or maybe you're not communicating what it can do. Okay. We'll talk about more about that in a minute. You have to create a strategy where you continue to talk to your customers. Paul put together his coffee shop. He talked to people before he put it together. He called it Cutbow because he's a fisherman. He discovered a lot of his friends are, and this was all about a trout. And the inside of the store, everything hanging there with artwork is versions of modern ironwork that's got cutbow tails in it, cutbow heads in it. And even his coffee cups and his bags have got trout swimming on them. Everybody kind of got used to that. I think they were surprised about it to begin with, but his version of the Cutbow story is that here he was moving into a market where every coffee shop was a Starbucks, and he was going upstream. And so for him, that Cutbow had more symbolism than anything else. We have to cater to the right customers in this new virtual world. There are people who are going to be more comfortable talking with us in Zoom than others. But we can't be moaning about the ones we've lost or the ones we can't get in touch with, because we really need to learn how to talk well to the ones we are talking to, follow up with them, and get ideas about who else you should be talking to. One of the other things you can do is continue to attend these university program workshops. If you go online to Rainforest Innovations, and you just put that word in your DuckDuckGo search URL, you will be taken to events. You click on those events, and we've got two things in there. We've got workshops that are upcoming, but we also have videos of everything we've presented. I know I'm in there several times. It's a nightmare to look at yourself on video, but they're in there, okay? And they can give you some ideas about what you can be doing. They also have Friday consultant hours that you can sign up for. Cecilia does that as well, where you can set a meeting with an expert and sit down and talk about what you're doing. And then in terms of this program that I'm doing today, we're going to follow up on April 13th. Is that it, Cecilia? She may not be present right now, but I think it's April.
Let's say April 13th.
On April 13th, we're going to do a boot camp in the morning for 15 minutes and talk about a new topic. And then every 30 minutes, I'm going to be doing an interview and a meeting with any of you that want to sign up. So when you're done today, if you just want to sit down and chat with me about your idea and why things are working well and why things aren't working and how do I find customers and that sort of thing, you can sign up. And Cecilia put up the URL for that. It's loborainforest.com, and you can get into it and you can sign up for it. All right. So let's go to the next slide. It's real important to figure out how you're going to use the information you bring back. We will talk about that. I wanted to bring up some books. You don't learn how to be an entrepreneur from your books. You learn from doing your first 5 interviews and really blowing the pooch, okay? It really goes wrong, those first 5 interviews. You're very critical. You don't like your face. You don't like the t-shirt you were wearing. You think you didn't look right. You thought you talked too fast. You thought you forgot things. I talked to hundreds of people and they all tell me the same thing. Other people go, that first one went really super well, okay? Business Model Generation, Art of the Start by Guy Kawasaki. The Business Model Generation is by Strategizer, developed by some guys from up in Norway and Sweden. Alexander, what's Alexander's last name? Osterwalder. And he wrote this book. I wish my colleagues and I had written it about the same time. We were doing the same thing. We no longer do big, complicated business models unless we have a major investor who wants it. Art of the Start by Guy Kawasaki. It's like having a conversation with him. Incredibly blessed to have him for some period of time as a mentor. And he talks pretty direct about what you should and shouldn't do. And you're sitting there reading and going, oh dear. Lean Entrepreneur is by a guy out of San Diego. His name is Brant Cooper. He works with Brad Feld up in Boulder, Colorado, which had an unfortunate event the other day. God bless all of them. And the Startup Owner's Manual by Steve Blank is used by the National Science Foundation. All four of them point to the same thing. And that is, you don't sit there and worry about what you're doing. You sit there and you do it. You get feedback on what you've done, and then you change what you're doing. You're not going to go out and insult people and get mad at them. That's not what I'm talking about. You're going to go out, take your product and show it to people, and then you're going to learn you probably shouldn't have done that. You need a couple of slides that show how it works. You're probably going to go out and talk too much, and you find out you shouldn't have done that. You should have let them talk and ask them pointed questions. You're going to go out and you're going to try to raise money, and somebody's going to say to you, you're not ready, and you're going to come back and go, but I've got this great idea. So let's go forward and talk about what customers interviews help us do. Next slide. So to look for information online is kind of an interesting process. I can't see the side there. Can we pull that over at all, Cecilia? All right, to look for associations and websites for what it is you're doing. The two in red are fedconnect.gov and grants.gov. If you remember nothing else out of this presentation, one of the easiest ways to have a non-obligatory loan to get your company started is to qualify for a grant or qualify for an agency grant of some sort or another. These two websites list everything that is out there. Everything, anything that's being asked for, anything that's been given. Now, wait a minute. Can I call up some guy who just got a grant on a subject that's related to what I'm doing and ask him what he's doing? He's not going to tell you the technical details, but yeah, they'll let you interview them. You'd be surprised when they find out what you're doing and you saw that they were an expert and you're calling up to find out how'd you do what you do. You'll be surprised. They'll give you a half hour. Join LinkedIn Business and Facebook Business. I'm not into the anti-Facebook and LinkedIn movements. I understand there are issues and there are problems. All I know is that businesses are using these websites, and businesses that don't have websites are able to really succeed using them. There's something called crunchbase.com. The Lobo Rainforest Innovation Center has a subscription to that. Subscription can be a little pricey. Maybe your local library. I know UNM's got a subscription to it, but it's a place where you can say, you pull together your keywords. I want something about signal. I want something about red light signal. I want something about red light signal opening up doors for people who can't open the doors. And I want companies that build it. I want research labs that research it. And I want the names of the individuals, their emails, and their phone numbers. Crunchbase has got everything in it. Facebook only thinks it's got everything in it. Crunchbase has got it, okay? Another place for you to go look is your professional organizations. Let's say you're an artist and you belong to a group here in New Mexico that meets both in Santa Fe and Albuquerque and talks with artists about commercializing their work. You're going to go to those meetings and you're going to ask people, what do you think of what it is that I'm producing? This is my style. How would you go about getting it into the eye of the public and selling it? And talk to your colleagues about it. Amazon, also for a fee, does research. Now, Amazon and Google do research for you. It can get a little pricey, especially if they make a lot of contacts, but you can go to MTurk, which is at Amazon, and they will help you. And then another thing that's really interesting for me is Google Voice. At $10 a month, it will help you manage telephone calls to potential customers and even record and provide a transcript of what was said. You don't have to sit down and take notes. It'll actually provide a transcript of what was said. So one of the ways to do market research when you're talking to a customer, and I really highly recommend this, you just look them straight in the eye and you go, I'm gonna pick a name here. Carmen, you and I talked at the beginning. Carmen, how do I find out about what industry my product most relates to? I want to pick 3. And Carmen, because she's at the SBA, going to say, oh, we've got databases here to look through this.
Yes,
Okay.
we do. We have Ibis World which we can use, or Data Axle. We can go look at similar companies and look at your competitors.
Isn't that interesting? So SBA's got these big mounts of nationwide and state restricted databases, and they can help you look at who is in your market and what is your market. Okay. What is your market? Let's go to the next slide. Now, so far you're going, oh gosh, I've heard all this stuff. I don't want to do market research. Market research that you're doing it the way that I'm recommending it, my peers are recommending, because I've said I've worked with 500 different startups, means that you're pushing customers to you, you're pulling customers to you, you're interacting with them from the moment the idea comes into your mind. So one of the things that people always ask me about is, would a website push or pull customers to me? The answer is, in the beginning, no. But what you want it for eventually is so that people who you've asked to interview with you can take a look at who you are and what you do and find out the bios on you and your partners on your team. Website development has really changed in the last 3 years alone. People are using what they call a drag and drop interface, and there are companies out there that have software packages that, rather than having to type HTML into a website developer or type in a box this big on a on one of the website developers that are out there like WordPress, you actually can go, it's like picking in a toy store. You can say, oh, I want an introduction with a photograph. You pull that box down, you put the introduction and the photograph in. I want this to be blue. You pick the color, you pull it down. You want a box that you want a format for introducing each member of your team and telling all about me, because you see that on all the websites. There's a bazillion different formats you can choose from. You don't have to know how to code. And for somebody who doesn't know how to code but uses things like Facebook or uses Zoom or uses Crunchbase or any other database to do certain kinds of things, it's not that difficult to do. Bubble, Zapier, Webflow, and they're all called low codes, okay? One of the ones that I'm kind of interested in is MakerPad. There's a group also called AR Maker, and they actually have a group of consultants that, for those of you that are trying to figure out how to manufacture your first prototype, they'll actually have a group of volunteers. I don't know how many they've got located in Albuquerque. I tend to work with the ones out of San Diego, but they will actually get a group of colleagues together and help you for free. So there are people that are available that can have products out there, links to help you produce a website that just takes you, I'm going to say minutes, but probably you're thinking about it very carefully. So let's say it takes you 2 days, but you're not going to have to code. Okay. Next slide. So this is where we're going to get into the guts of how you do. Oh, and there's a little bit more about MakerPad. MakerPad, one of the things I like about it is it teaches you how to get up and running. And we do expect in 2021 that some of the largest startups are going to be apps that are helping people do what you have to do, which is set up your own business online using a product that's just drag and drop. You grab the box, you put it in place. One of the interesting products I learned about the other day is through iCore is something called Loom. I went and took a look at it. What is Loom? Let's say I'm writing an email, and I'm writing that email to Nikita, and I want them to see that I'm a really sincere person, and all I'm trying to do is an interview with him because he has an expertise I want to take advantage of. Them that I want to take advantage of. Loom helps you film a video like you would do on FaceTime or Zoom that you can embed in the body of your email. And its initial service is free. If you have a greater volume where you want to go out to hundreds of people, you're going to have to pay. But for your first start of getting to 50, 60 people to talk to them, you can take your pitch, Jason, that you did, embed it in an email and set it out and said, can we meet? And for those of you that I just don't act this way, I don't want to do this, something along the lines of 46 of all Americans are going to be working in a startup or for themselves by the end of 2021. Is it partly the result of COVID? I think COVID sped it up, but it's a trend that's been going on for the last 3 years. And what founded the United States of America was small businesses run by people for themselves. There are only 2,500, count them, companies over 500 employees in the United States. There are 27 million plus small businesses in the United States. And San Diego, which is one of the wealthiest cities in the United States, only has 65 companies over 250, and all the rest are small businesses. And it's one of the wealthiest cities in the United States. It's ranked number 8. Let's go on to the next slide. I think we got a comment over here in chat. Let's take a look at it. Okay, so Adam Davidson's criteria, the passion economy, delivering a value only you can do in a niche market, willing to pay a premium for it. Business models, and that's what that is, depends upon what you're providing. If you have an app which is inexpensive, that doesn't apply to you. If you're talking about luxury services or luxury electronics or specific electronics that are needed for purposes such as manufacturing or for the military, you probably will find a market that is willing to pay for it. But it starts with your product. It starts with how much you think you're going to sell, how big you think your market is, who you've talked to before you can make that decision. So where we're starting right now is where you start. People here don't ask commenters to sign an NDA. I would never ask anybody that I'm calling up on the phone for an NDA because I'm not telling them the secret sauce behind what I'm doing. I'm telling them what it does. It solves a problem. So if I have a solar device that sits out in the middle of a solar field like Anthony had, that measure, it's called a photovoltaic irradiance device that's predicting whether clouds are going to come over my solar field and whether or not I have to buy some energy from somewhere else, use my backup batteries, or any of those things. When I talk with them in the beginning about what it does, I talk like that. I don't tell them how it works. So I don't need an NDA. That's not what these things are about. If you get called by somebody you've talked to who says, you know, I'm in the business, I do the same thing, I'd like to talk to you, that's when you worry about having an NDA. Okay, let's move on. Next slide. This is something called a business model canvas. We're not going to go into detail today about this. There is a video out on the Lobo Rainforest website, and it's a whole thing that I did with Cecilia about how you use a business model canvas. The point is we're not writing big business plans. Most business schools in the United States have even stopped, including UNM, having business plan contests because we don't need them. We're a startup. We're working with very little money. I mean, Apple started up with $5,000, guys. We are looking at first a value proposition. What value does our product have to each one of our markets, not to the whole market because it can't satisfy the whole market. We are looking at customer segments. Who are we marketing to and how? We're looking at the customer relationships we want to have. How are we going to sell to our customers? Channels and partners, we're looking at people who can help us do this. And we'll go on. Will this be shared with us? Absolutely, Hanif. We're going to put it up so that you can print it out and use it as a Bible. Now, why am I not in my presentation? What happened here? Did we lose my presentation, Cecilia?
Sorry, I was trying to change the view mode because someone said that they couldn't see the screen and I clicked the wrong. I clicked the wrong thing. Let me go back to it. Sorry.
This is one of the things that happens when you interview people on Zoom. Your technology stops working. Biggest point of advice I can give you is make sure your computer is fully charged before you go to the meeting. Next slide. So what are we going to talk about? Let's talk about how we do an interview. This slide is filling up the screen funny. I can understand what they're talking about. Okay. Okay, is that going to work now? Aha, here we go. One of the first things you do is you brainstorm a list, and I'll show you how to do that in the middle in a minute, of customers. And one of the things you're asking yourself to figure out as you work with them on the phone and talk with them over time is, are they aware now of what you're doing? Yes, they are when they're in your first interview with them. Are they considering the product? That will help, but that will be helped by the fact you're going to give them updates about where you are with the development of your product. Do they want to acquire that? That's what we mean by acquisition. Are they going to need service? Are they going to need some help to put this thing in place? And how do we keep them with add-ons and low cost because they were an initial adopter? That's what this chart is about. So the first thing I'm going to do is the thing that's missing off of here is the name of the client. So when I talk with the client under awareness in this first interview, I'm going to write down what their goals were, what actions they take using something similar, or why is it that they're excited? What would they do if they got my product? Touch points and channels. How do they want to be interacted with? Do they want service? What do they want? Like sometimes people love buying organic products and talking about them online in a community with other people. The company we're taking to NSF on Monday is going to be promoting a communication device for people who live long-term in a motorized wheelchair and need to be able to communicate, have hotspots, charge the devices that they're working with, and even get something as simple as a drink or something to eat with a robotic arm. Robotic arms are, by the way, this is an electronic mechanical arm is what it is. So what actions will the customer be able to do with what you got? What actions are they taking right now? Touch points and channels, how do they want to be worked with? When we know one of the things our customers want was when we give them electronic updates, they're going to want to make sure we test their system to make sure it's working, and then download the updates and then confirm that the updates have been loaded and then send them an email. Customer thoughts and emotions. Customers who are going to buy this from us so far have told us they're very emotional about it, because when somebody lives full-time in a wheelchair, and they're 19 years old going to college, they generally have, if they have limited mobility from the hips up, which is what this product is for, they have to ask everybody to do something from them. And one of their toughest things is just opening up a classroom door. Another tough thing is just getting into a bathroom. And so our device has an RFID device that opens up those doors. Customer thoughts on that? Very emotional that maybe they're going to have something that's going to make life full of more freedom and choices. Pain points, I just mentioned some of them, and opportunities to improve. They'll tell you, I wish it would do this. I wish it would do that. I wish it would power my chair. You don't know the number of times I've gotten stalled in the middle of an intersection, crossing the street. These are the things you want to find out. And you're saying to me, what if they don't tell me? You're going to thank them for the interview, and you're going to say to them, who else can I talk to? You will, after you become more skilled at this, people will tell you things. Believe me, they will. Let's go to the next slide.
Can we get a copy of that?
Yes, it's going to be in this presentation, so you'll be able to pull it out of there. So one of the things we need to talk about is what your value proposition is. When you tell your story at the beginning, this is the problem we are solving. Not that this is so cool, it's going to do all these things for you. You're leading the customer. You don't want to do that. You want to get the reaction to what you're talking about. And you have a value prop for every market you've got. So this company that's going to national on Monday works with users. Then we call them adapters. It works with caregivers. It works, we have a market that is manufacturers, we have a market that's distributors, and we have a market of adapters who only want to get updates and interact with us online, because what they want to do is give us ideas and co-create new products with us. So that's one of the things we know. And here's the connection for where my slides are going to be. Next slide. So I'm going to repeat it again. What are your market and customer segments? I just gave you a company that's got 4. I'm working with another company that actually has 8, and I've asked them to narrow it down to 3 because we can't be everything to everybody in the beginning. We'll get to those other 5 when we can. We're the ones where it's most important to have a profiler that looks at the surfaces of concrete and determines whether or not at a nano level it's got fractures. Next to each, what value do you assume that your product provides them? In the case of this profiler that takes a look at a nano level, it provides construction companies information that the concrete they're pouring for a 40-story high building is secure. So let's talk about market segments that you think you're serving. Naylene, are you here in the meeting? I guess Naylene, how many people do we have right now, Cecilia? Who's here in the meeting?
There's about 19.
Okay. Naylene, are you here?
Hi, yes, I am.
I'm calling on people. What a terrible thing. I didn't tell you I was going to do that. Naylene, what's your idea? Don't give me the technical details of it. Just tell me overall what it is.
I want to have a laundromat, eco-friendly on the Laguna Reservation using solar panels, gray water. Yeah, and I want it to also lead out to community garden.
Okay. So you're going to use any leftover water, and hopefully it has only organic chemicals in it for feeding gardens, right?
Yes, I was thinking also, so like the yucca plant used to be used for soap. That's biodegradable, and
yes, my grandmother used it.
Yeah,
my grandmother used it.
Yeah, and from the video, an old video that I was shown, it soaks up pretty well.
Yes, it
and
does.
It's going back into the earth. We can replant it. There's also other entrepreneurs that specialize in soap. So if maybe I could work with them, that would be another option too.
Now,
yes, I'm going to say,
Naylene, let me ask you a question. Are you going to any university in the state of New Mexico right now?
No.
Okay. One of the things you can look at is there are a whole group of consultants that are working with the Lobo Rainforest Innovations that do these Friday minutes, and then come talk with me on the 13th, if you would, and we'll sit down and we'll talk about this. I love anything that has to do with using the culture of a community to provide a service that means sense in that culture. My grandmother was a curandera, and we never were able to go from Albuquerque up to Santa Fe without stopping a million times along the road, because she would find all kinds of plants, and we kept these little straw bags in the car and she would stuff in it. I don't think I ever had an aspirin as a kid growing up. I had these plasters that were put on my chest. The only thing I didn't like was she put this itchy pink vest on. She said it was so we would get better faster, because we didn't like the itchy vest. So let's sit down and let's talk about what you're doing, because what you want to do is, you've got some assumptions in there, is you want to talk to your community and you want to find out from your community, is this something you can get to? How many people, what percentage of my community can get to it? Maybe I have to think about making it portable inside of a truck, okay? So I can take it out and get it to people. And if I did that, where would I get my water source from? Does my community have plumbing? Does it have water all over the place? Would I have to provide that if I took that out in the terms of having a truck that did it? And trucks start at about 250,000, so they're not inexpensive. So there's just, one of the things we want to do is tell a story, and then we want to ask people, what do you think of the idea? Have you ever had to solve the problem about how you wash your clothing? Yeah, I live out here with my Native American, my indigenous community, and I don't have any flowing water. I get it out of a big plastic container. I have to go into town anyway to wash my clothes, and I do that not as frequently as I would like. The rest of the time, they do what my grandmother did, which was water in a bucket and a scrub board. I swear sometimes I think my grandmother put the scrub board on me. Get the dirt out of my skin. So what can I say? She was not, I never had any hair left in my head when she was done washing it. All right, well, good idea, Naylene. I love the thought that's going into that. And we have talked about your customer is the people who are in your community. Who else is your customer? Have you thought about the fact that the person you're buying your equipment from is also your customer? What will they get from working with you? Can they provide you the kinds of environmental friendly washing machines and dryers that you want, that don't use that much water and don't use that much electricity? Is there somebody that can help you with a solar hookup? The solar vendor. And wait a minute, can you talk to the University of New Mexico and talk to one of the professors that's developing a new generation of panels? Ah, see, your channels and your partners are also customers. How will you sell to them? Your sale to them is you're not really selling anything to them. They're selling something to you, but your sale to them is a social venture where they get some social recognition for doing a wise and great thing. Okay? All right. Hosada. Cecilia, tell us about Hosada.
Oh no, I was just saying we could connect her with Osazda. It's one of our startups that they work with solar stuff. So I was just thinking about potential connections and partnerships.
Thank you. Next slide. Now see what happens, Naleen, when you get to talk. You get all kinds of ideas about what's going on. Love to talk to you again. So your objectives of your interview are to create a relationship. First, research the customer before you go in. Know as much about them as you possibly can. Look up reviews of them. There are these websites that give you nasty reviews about whether or not people are really good at what they say they do. Once you've got all that, you're going to share a value proposition and use cases. And we're getting close to the end, so let's go to those. Let's race to them. So we've talked about a value prop. To summarize, it includes what is the problem we're solving, for whom, what is a unique value prop we deliver to our customer or markets, what bundles of products and services are we offering to each customer segment, and what are your value props? We talked with Naleen about that. Naleen, if you're going to have somebody providing you washing machines and dryers, solar panels, water, plumbing, all those good things, what is the value prop that they get to interact with the people and create this new business? Do you have a website? Are they going to hook up with you as they're building? Are you going to show them on Facebook? Are you going to refer people to them? Okay. And in fact, can you use native the people to deliver all those services you need in building? And can this be 100% business supported by the people? It will get the word out there. All right. But they're still your market. And we don't say that the market is the Navajo or it's Isleta or it's Pacuras. What we say is the market is the people we serve, but it's also the vendors that we use and what is in it for them to do it. Okay. All right. Next slide. And you have to be clear on this. Many of us are researchers, and all we want to know is anybody using a piece of equipment that looks like us. In developing and building the UCSD health system, we used, like I said, Pixis. It was in its beta stages in 1993. And we were the first beta site where it was used. What was it? A vault that sat on the patient floor. We didn't have to go chasing down pharmacists and wait 2 hours for a prescribed medication. We predicted what that care path needed. We had the medications already in this vault with the patient's name on it. The doctor had already given us orders. And we had choices if they were having trouble sleeping or if they were in a tremendous amount of pain. So we had Schedule A narcotics in there as well. And we were a beta site for it. And everybody said nurses are going to be using drugs, doctors are going to be using drugs. Unfortunately, there was a handful of people who tried that. But we had 6,500 employees who secured those systems. And we figured out what to do about the 2 that decided they were going to abuse it. So we have a value prop for each business segment we talked to. Next slide. You need to justify who your client is and what it is you're asking them for. Advice. We're not asking for money just yet. Space, expertise. I helped a team the other day go out and work with this company that provides the free advice on electronics and manufacturing boards for devices. And we're talking with them about how they can help us out. And while they're doing it, they're giving us samples of what other people have done. So it's helping our design work. One of the things you're going to want to know, because somebody might ask you, is how does your product make money? And I just use a general guideline, which is find out and research deeply the cost of your first prototype, multiply it times 4, and that's the first price you're going to use. Is it real? At that point, it's not. You haven't sold anything. But that's a way of looking at it. Please be able to answer the question, who's your competition? Who else is doing this? You find that out by talking to the customer. Who else is doing something similar? Are they using a different set of optics to give a signal so that a device works? And what about our device do they think would work better? Have they ever done any research into this? We're not telling them why ours is better during the interview until the very end. Let's go forward. And I'm racing against the clock here. I actually am going to skip this portion on use cases, but what I want you to have is a story that talks about how your product is used in a situation for a market segment. It's like writing the script to a movie. You're going to have a small paragraph that says, for the people who are washing their clothes, this is what the story is. For the people providing the washing machines and dryers, or the solar, or the building, this is what's in it for them, and this is what they're going to see happen. Provide use cases. Next one. One of the things that's we have a lot of here in Albuquerque is online virtual pitch competitions. You need to be able to tell somebody in 90 seconds what you're doing. Everybody says to me, oh, I've left out too much detail. I didn't tell them this, and I didn't tell them that, and I didn't tell them we were pursuing a specific community. Here's the problem. You want them to ask you those questions. If you are talking for too long, you are talking for too long. So 90 seconds, tell me what the problem is you're solving. How does your business make money? Who's your competition? What is your unique value proposition? And what is the market for your product and your potential market share? My name is Susan Cornelius. Have you ever wondered how to start up a company? Well, I dive into from the very beginning talking to customers so we can figure out how this business is going to make money. Do I have competition? There are lots of people out there, but my unique place in the market is I've worked with 500 different companies. I have actually helped significantly start up 70 companies, and I've actually done 7 startups on my own. What is the market for your product and your potential market share? Right now, I am the lead mentor at the University of New Mexico, and I have feedback from my students that they enjoy working with me. Next slide. That's my pitch, people. Okay, so what are you telling your potential customer about what you're doing? What to avoid? Asking for a couple of minutes of someone else's time and taking more than a couple of minutes. I want you to practice using this pitch. You're going to rewrite it 1,000 times. I know I have. So we've got a question about, can you post that question again on the chat for me? We've got a question about potential customers from one of our guys and from iCore. Comment on funding your business using grants and funders and using investors. What's the obvious difference? The obvious difference between the two groups, grants versus investors, is you got investors. The United States government gave you a grant. They want you to be. They're going to hold you accountable through reporting you would not believe. But the investors are also going to get into, on the plain investment side, they're going to get into helping you operate your company. And that may be an advantage or it may be a disadvantage. The biggest thing between the two groups of money is, as an investor in your company, an angel or a VC wants to make a percentage out of what it is that you're doing, okay? Whereas the federal government says to you, you have to spend this whole money on your project. You can make $5,000 off of it. That's generally what they do with $1 million. And you are reporting out to them the way they want. They're going to give you Dawnbreaker, which is an organization, or VentureWell, which is another organization that coaches startups. And they're going to work with you to try to get your product out there as early as they can. Our general guideline is, if you go longer than 19 months getting your first product out there, you're never going to launch. Okay? Practice your pitches with friends, with family. Do it in front of the mirror if you live alone. What is it you're doing? I've given you the questions to answer, and I know Jason just worked his on the other day, and man, he did a 360, and then another 360, and then another 360 to get the right pitch. What he started off with wasn't what he ended up with. And you know, generally when you do a pitch, you feel like you left something out. But if you get people's attention, they're going to ask you, well, are you serving the Native American community with parental values? And then you say, yes, that's one of our focuses for our mission. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, we're going to do one last slide. Can we go forward? Go forward again. Okay, what I'd like you to do is think about what companies you want to talk to, and what are 3 reasons why you want to talk to those companies. Now think about, what are their professional behaviors? Are they drilling holes, and those fracking holes, those core drilling holes are cracking, and we need something to fill the cracks, and they need this liquid metal that I've come up with to fix it? And can I produce it in the right amounts that they need it? This is what you write in there. And then narrow it down to some people you want to meet. Crunchbase, LinkedIn, Facebook, The web, I am a great keyword searcher. I learned that from that company that was a predecessor of Google. I ask stupid questions in stupid ways using my language, and darned if I don't find what I'm looking for. Every time somebody says to me, I can't find it on the web, I do. And I find it in less than 15 minutes. So put down your stupid question, or your smart question is how I'd rather prefer to it, and see what pops up. And don't say to yourself, I already know that. Go on to LinkedIn and write in the company's name and see who's on LinkedIn from that company, and write them a message, ask them if they'll meet with you. One student we had, when somebody told us you can't use LinkedIn, sent out 100 letters on LinkedIn, got 60 interviews off of it, and his company launched. Okay, next slide, and then we're done. Create a list of potential customers, customer 1, customer 2, customer 3. I gave you an example, a user of what you do, a manufacturer of what you do, a distributor of what you do. People who are going to help you along with the people who are actually going to use it. Who are they? Why are they important? What value does your product provide to them? You have a different value prop for each one. Next slide, and that'll be our last. I think it's the one I'm looking for. Nope, next slide. Next slide. Here we go. This is a script for doing a customer interview. Thank them for taking the interview. Tell them your story. It's 1.5 minutes, people. That's it. Share the problem you're solving. Here's a story of what I'm doing. These are its features. Don't explain it. Don't go into detail. You want them to ask you questions. Then look up there and B. How are you solving a problem like I described? What are your goals to grow your business? What are you using right now? You only ask that one if they're in business. What are you using right now? Do I have competitors? Well, who would those competitors be? What features do you like of what I talked to you about? What features would you like? How much would you be willing to pay? Which markets should I address? There's something missing off of here. First thing you do, way up to another B, write this down. Ask them to tell their story. How are you solving a problem like I described? How are you washing your clothes? How are you keeping your children safe? How are you starting up your business? What did you learn? Get them to tell a story, because you can get at the emotions in the beginning. You can ask the factual questions and listen. Let them finish. Even if they talk slowly, let them finish. Then summarize what you heard from the potential customer. Did I miss anything? State your 90-second pitch again so that they remember. And ask them, what would you add to this pitch? And then you ask them, I'm wondering if I can obtain from you 2 additional people that you think I should talk to. Summarize your goals, tell them your timeline. I'm trying to get to market in the next 19 months. Can I send you updates on what I'm doing? And thank you. That's how you do a customer interview. I can't tell you enough times that I never liked talking to people I didn't know. When I was 17 years old, I wouldn't even talk to a shoe salesman. I didn't start talking until I was 31. I could tell you all about my personal life and how that happened. But once I started talking to people, I realized I had something. I always realized I had something to say. But I found out that if I share a story with people, then they will come back, share their story, and then we can talk. There's a bunch of other stuff in this. I hope a bunch of you sign up to do 30 minutes with me on the 13th of April. We started with a boot camp at 10 o'clock, and by 10:30, we're into our 30-minute meetings. And the rest of this, I wrote it like a book for you so that you can go through it. It even tells you to mute your speaker button when they're talking so you don't interrupt. All right? Why are we doing customer interviews? We are collecting data on what our customer wants and needs and the problem they're solving. And when you're an artist, or you're selling candles, or you're opening up a nursery to sell plants, or you're opening up a nursery to sell herbal plants, or you're providing a special food that's organic that gives energy, or you have designed a signaling device that nobody else is using, a power system that nobody else is using, a microwave oven that nobody else is using, an optical system that will get us clearer images of MRI images as opposed to using a signaling device. You can be as technical as you want. You still need to ask the question, what problems are they solving with what they're doing? And of the things you think you're solving, what do they think? They'll tell you, they'll ask you, does your system do the following? Have you figured out how to do this image quickly? Have you figured out how to do this non-invasively? Have you figured out compare it to other devices that do minimally invasive procedures. People, you'll find people to talk to you. If you're working with hospital systems and you've got a piece of equipment, find out who their supply committees are. Talk to your favorite doctor there, okay? And find out who's the head of the supply committee. Talk with them. They have these supply committees that keep you from breaking in, but you will end up getting to talk to them. If you are got a product that you think researchers at Los Alamos will use, call up the Small Business Administration, talk to them and ask if you can come in and do some interviews. If you think that your product is going to need the support of several tribes, through your elders, talk to them and find out who you should meet and talk to get the investments that you need. Talk to people. They are the ones buying stuff from you, and you better get used to talking to them now. And I sincerely tell you that when I went to my high school graduation celebration 25 years later, and everybody was telling my husband she was so sweet, she hardly ever talked, just really smart and a great athlete. After about the 20th person, my husband turns around and looks at me and says, "Who are they talking about?" Me. Okay. So I hope I see as many of you as possible on Wednesday the 13th, and that's when you can talk all you want about what's going on. Thank you, Betsy. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Share this. The whole thing is going to be on our website, so you'll be able to look at it again. And then the slides that we didn't discuss, that's going to be up there too. You can use the whole thing like a book, because frankly, all those books I showed you, I took everything that I've been using out of those books and stuck it in this presentation. So you don't have to buy the books, but they would be nice. Okay. Bye, everybody.